Welcome back to episode 5 of Relationships Over Reps with coaches Rich Lansky and Johnny Parker. We appreciate you tuning in. As always, if you like what we're talking about, please feel free to go ahead and subscribe to us on the YouTube channel at Authentic Coaching and at Relationships Over Reps, as well as give us any feedback. You can like, dislike, or let us know what you would like us to discuss, anything authentic coaching or athlete-centered coaching. So again, this week for episode 5, we're going to look at dealing with challenges from an authentic coaching standpoint. I'm going to bring in my co-host, Coach Johnny Parker.
What do you say, Coach?
I'm doing great. Good to hear your voice.
It's always good to hear yours. And I express my appreciation of being included in something with such an internationally known coach as you.
Coach, I think you must have read the wrong resume. I'm just a ham and egger working every day with kids trying to make a difference. But I appreciate it. So, Coach, we know that from your background at the middle school, high school, collegiate, and professional ranks, and my background across the different levels of coaching over the last, between us, 90 years, I think we figured out. But we are looking at authentic coaching, making kids feel special, investing in kids versus numbers or positions, coaching kids, coaching people, not weights, those type of things. And today we want to look at how that authentic coaching, that building relationships can be helpful when dealing with challenging situations. And the most challenging situation in sport, of course, has to do with when things aren't going well, when either you as an athlete are not performing well or the team as a team is not performing well. What are some of the most challenging issues that you've had to deal with at any level?
First of all, when you hit a rough patch, where you lose some games that maybe you should have won, or it doesn't matter, you lost. And, it doesn't, Coach, I've heard strength coaches say this in the past. Boy, we gave them a physical whipping. I mean, we tore them up physically. Now we lost 58-3, but we gave them a physical whipping. Bull, Coach, your score determines how well you did. And you can't just be saying, hey, I did my part and everybody else failed. Oh, you got to accept your full share of the blame. Now, with that, Coach, you can't get down on your players. They might just not be good enough. But, Coach, I can remember particularly in San Francisco, when we were building a program there, that, we'd come in on Monday after a Sunday, even if things didn't go our way. And I would say, look, guys, I know we got enough to get it done. Now, we just got a couple of things here we got to straighten out and get fixed, and we'll be fine. We've got enough to get it done. And I don't think you can be too specific. I think a general phrase like that is really what's needed at that point in time. So that's kind of how I handled that, particularly in the latter stages of my career. Because after all, I had been around a while, and if I didn't know what a winning program ought to look like, then I had no business being there. So I think that's one thing. And then with players, that maybe the press is on him, and the fans then pick up on that, and they boo him. I think I would do this. I would say, look, you can't pay any attention to what the press or the fans say because they don't know. They don't know whether the ball is blown up or stuffed. So, your mistakes might be magnified because of your position, But look, I know what you're capable of, and I know that you've got plenty of talent to get this done. So you get your chin up and let's get going here because you can do better than what you're doing. Now we both know that, but it's not from lack of effort. It's not from lack of ability. Just a couple of little errors here and there. And again, say if you're a cornerback and you've gotten beat deep several times, well, they can see that and they're going to pick up on that, but they don't know whether you're supposed to have safety help over the top or what. So I would tell them, just make sure you accept blame and don't point out anybody else's errors. You accept it all. You accept the blame yourself, even if you're not completely to blame.
I like what you said about that. First, of reassuring them, knowing that we are not abandoning them, that we know that what they have in them. We know the work that they've put in the off season, and it's just a matter of reorienting and making a couple things hit on all cylinders at the right time at the right place. But I do really appreciate what you said about the buck stops there. This is your issue, and I know you can get past that issue. Don't shift blame. We're going to work on the issues together. I like that.
Well, Coach, anything that I have said in our time together, I believe with all my heart. I'm at the stage of my life where I don't have guesses anymore. I have things that I've seen and experienced and have strong ideas on whether they're correct or not. It's the way I did it and the way I believe.
And I think your athletes over the years recognize that because I think one thing that athletes like to see is consistency. We talked about some of the different principles in our second podcast: reliability, accountability. Um, Consistency is one of them, and we need as coaches to be consistent with our athletes. They need to know that we're the same person on day one that we are on
Absolutely.
day 12.
Absolutely. Coach, that is exactly right. And, there's got to be something that athletes know that they can hang their hat on. And if one of those needs to be, you're going to be the same person every day. They're going to get the same thing, and that lose a game or two, you're not giving up on them. That you still believe in them. I think that's very important. So, anyway, Coach, that's um, now one thing you have to be on the lookout for is players getting discouraged. And you can kind of tell that when maybe they just don't seem to be that enthused that day. Or, they accept failure in the weight room too easily. So those are things you can look out for. Now, if you're new at a place and hadn't gotten all the players, the type of players that you want, one thing you got to watch out for is the phonies infecting everybody else. Because the phonies, now the first thing they're going to do is point the finger somewhere else. We had a bad game plan. It's the offense's fault. It's the defense's fault. It's, you know, I can't sack the quarterback every play. The secondary got to cover somebody. It's just things like that. Then, if they've got any leadership qualities, then they can infect a lot of other guys. And you got to get rid of those people as soon as you can, but you can't get rid of all of them your first year. So uh, I think attitude. You heard this saying, attitude determines altitude. Well, I think you have got to make sure that you isolate those guys as much as you can.
Yeah, one of the things I've seen over the years, especially in situations with people that point fingers everywhere but at their own game or their own performance, is a lot of players will really lose um, their support of that player. If they're a character guy, if they're somebody who is self motivated, which you have to be successful, not just in sport but in life. So a lot of those guys will kind of be pushed to the side. And when you have, a cancer that in a locker room like that, or somebody who's always negative, it's really important that you can isolate that person from your leaders and
Absolutely.
from your young kids or your new players. Going
Absolutely. Especially if they have any leadership ability. That's where it's really dangerous.
One of my presidents that I really enjoyed learning about in history, U.S. history, was Harry Truman. You remember that sign that he kept over his
But
desk?
stop there.
Yep, the buck stops here. So a great player, a great leader, whether it's in business, whether it's in sport, whether it's in the military, they take responsibility for their own actions first, and they lead from the top down, as we talked about before. You lead by example. You walk the walk, not just talk the talk. Um, Going back also to one of the things you talked about, when you notice things in the weight room, or you notice things during the warm up, and you see them hanging their head low, or they're discouraged, or they're, oh, woe is me, the it's always storm clouds overhead, it's never sunny. You've got to know your athletes and know how to flip that switch on them. Maybe we switch the workout a little bit and give them something that they're really good at, so they feel good about it, and give them something that they can achieve and get a sense of accomplishment. Start easy and then build up to the level that you know that they can do. It's kind of like in weightlifting. You take an easy opener to get in the game, and then the game starts, and then you go for it. Those type of things.
Coach, I took a little different approach. I tried to make things so tough that they would say, "Hey, man, if I can do this, I can sure win on Sunday or Saturday or whatever." You know, I if I can get through all of this, there ain't nothing the other team can do that's going to be this hard. And I would preach that to them. I'll tell them, look, guys, you think that bunch you're playing next week, you think they're working as hard as you? Heck no, they're not. You're outworking them. And that's the first step. Well, that's the second step toward beating them. The first is not hoping, not believing, but knowing you can beat them. So, confidence comes from demonstrated ability. And if they hadn't demonstrated yet that they can be consistently successful on the field, you try to create an environment and a system where they're consistently improving and successful in the weight room.
Well,
And
coach,
I think that carries over some now. It's not 100% carryover, but it's the best you can do.
I think maybe I need to rephrase or explain a little bit more what I said. I don't consider going easy on them. I want them to work at tough things. I want them to know that they can handle the same weights or greater weights in the weight room than they might in competition in the case of weightlifting. Or I know that they can last for 5 minutes on a drive. But what I will do based on knowing my athlete is I'll give them that opening salvo, something that they can handle. And then I'm going to ramp it up. And then I'm going to ramp it up a little more. But I'm a firm believer in success builds on success. And as we scaffold our instruction, whether it's in the classroom or in the weight room or on the field, we've got to give them things that they can achieve. And then you make it harder. And then you challenge them
Yep.
more and more and more. So it's a cumulative effect. So I think we're on the same
Yep.
page there.
Now, you know what? I would tell players this too. I tell them this individually. Why is it I believe in you more than you believe in yourself? Explain that to me. And they wouldn't have an answer. I'd say, well, get your belief and your expectations up to where mine are, because mine aren't coming down. The only option we have is for you to get yours up.
The standard is the standard. It does not change.
No,
I think
no.
that's one.
And I think of the standard as being kind of a universal way that your team is going to do things. I always thought more in terms of the individual. And again, if they've had their reputation beat down in the press, and then the fans call into the talk shows saying that they stink and all of that, they have They have got to get their belief in themselves up to where mine is. I don't tell them, well, hey, look, I know you won't ever be an all pro, but you could be, a good starter. I don't ever say that. I always tell them, you can be a lot better than you are. And if you want to guarantee that you'll be defeated, keep thinking negative thoughts about yourself.
Well, that goes back to the thing we talked about in principles of leadership and coaching before in our last podcast or two podcasts ago when we said, see our athletes as they could be, not as they are. Look at
Absolutely.
look at what their upper limit, their potential is, and know. And when we let the athletes know that we believe in them, and the other coaches believe in them, and their fellow players believe in them, that can be a very dangerous thing for that athlete in a positive way. That athlete now knows that the ceiling is raised, and there is nothing holding them back from being better. So when tough times do hit, they can draw back on that and know that, well, if coach believes in me and my fellow teammates believe in me, maybe I can do this. Well, yeah, I can do this because I'm ready to do it. I've done it in the past. I can do it again. Simply a matter of flipping the switch. One of the things that they look at with self-determination theory from Ryan and DC is they looked at not just the relationship and the partnership between coaches, but also athletes having a sense of achievement, knowing that they're good at something and knowing that they're getting better at something. And that's important for that.
Absolutely. Now, this is, I don't know if this is related or not, but at San Francisco, we had a defensive man named Bryant Young. Bryant is so much mature than the rest of us, myself included, that my last couple of years there, I called him Mr. Young. I've never called him by his first name. That was just a way of showing my respect for him. But he was as fine a man as you will ever meet. I could live to be 200 years old, and I'd never meet a better man than Bryant Young. Anyway, he was asked, by a reporter for an article, Bryant, why is it you drive in 30, he lived 30 minutes away. Why don't you drive half an hour and come in and work as hard as you do in the weight room when you know you're better than anybody else that we got, or probably better than anybody you're going to face? And he said, here's what he said. And he's in the Hall of Fame, by the way. So this is not some slouch. He said, I feel like I'm fighting for my job every day. I feel like I can't afford to miss. And then when and he missed, in my 3 years, he missed one day. And it's because I made him. I told him, do not come tomorrow. Do not. And you take the time and rest, play with your kids, do whatever. But I'll change the locks if I have to keep you out. And he agreed and didn't come. And I don't know if that rest did him any good or not, but he was, 33 our last year. And, you would think that they had a, pretty significant decline from the age of 30, but he hadn't. And he put everything he had into every exercise, every rep, every set, and he did the same on the field. When they changed drills, he would sprint to the next drill. And the rest of them, the defensive line, they'd just kind of be jogging, got jogging along. And I'd say, hey, what's the matter with you guys? That guy's 10 times better than anybody else. And why aren't you doing what he does? Why aren't you mimicking him? Use him as an example. But oh, that used to make me mad to see him sprint and other guys just slow jog to the next drill. And I wish their coach had jumped on them about that. But anyway, coach.
Well, Coach, I think what you said just reinforces something that the both of us have seen over the last 40 to 50 years of our respective careers, 4 decades for me, 5+ for yourself. And that is the best athletes, the best leaders, whether it's on the field, whether it's in the locker room, whether it's in the weight room, whether it's in business, whether it's in military, whether it's in family. Um, the best, most successful ones are the ones that are self-driven. They don't need
Yeah.
somebody else to hype them up. They don't need loud music or somebody to slap them in the back of the head or screaming "Let's go" at them. Sometimes it helps them, but they don't need that. They're self-motivated because there's something in them. There's something in them that holds them to a standard where they're going to challenge themselves and not let themselves drop below that standard in effort, in intensity, in consistency, and reliability, and accountability, all those things that we've talked about. I think those are the people, and those are the people in our locker room that we need to identify as quickly as possible when you come into a new situation or when a new rookie
Absolutely.
comes in. And those are the people you build around, and those are the people that you have the younger or newer players be mentored by. Because I think if we do that, we kind of set ourselves up almost like planning for that one time or that instance when there are things aren't good, when there are a lot of injuries, or when we make the wrong calls, or we have a lapse, and we're in a losing streak, those type of things, in a slump. But those are the people we can lean on because we've already set that culture. And I think that's important for us to initiate and to promote and then kind of step back and let it take away.
Yeah, and I come up with some crazy analogies, but I've used this with players that were self-driven, or tell them and think about coming home one afternoon and it's cold outside and you build a fire in the fireplace and you're sitting up there in your rocking chair, you can feel the warmth in the fire and you doze off and you wake up and that fire's kind of died down. And all you do, you throw some more wood on the fire. And I think your career is like that when you know your fire is growing, the fire in your belly is growing a little dim, then you got to throw some more wood on that fire. Whether somebody else throwing that wood or you yourself, because you are so self-driven. Just it that's it, you got to keep the fire burning inside. Now, you know, Coach, I think this that the more self-driven you are, the longer naps you can take while that fire's burning. But if you're not self-driven, then you got to be putting more wood on that fire, you know, every few minutes. And coach, I would tell players that are going through a rough time, I would talk where nobody else can hear it. I would just say, look, I know what you can do. And I know you've had to, maybe a play or two here and there that you'd like to have back. But I'm just telling you, I believe in you. And everybody in this locker room believes in you. And everybody upstairs in those coaches' office, they believe in you. So those opinions ought to count and not the ones in the media of these people that have no idea what your responsibility was on a given play or whatever. But let them know that you believe in them, and especially when they're going through a rough patch. Coach Parcells used to say, I remember our second year in New England, we started out 1-6. And I remember him telling the team on Wednesday when we were getting ready for the next game, he said, you're going to make me do some things I don't want to do. He didn't say what. He didn't say what, but, they figured it out for themselves. And he's talking about cutting people. Well, I ain't setting the world on fire here. I better get my rear end going. So that was a pretty good, without saying, I'm going to cut you or any of that. I thought that was a darn good way of expressing what your standard was. And that, nobody's going to run, catch up to the standard.
having the coach take part or take ownership also when things aren't going well.
Absolutely.
Maybe I'm not pushing you or I'm not giving you the support you need. What can I do to help you? And then, when we have a transformational coaching approach, what can I do to help get you to the next level? As opposed to walking in saying, man, we lost 50-0. You guys all stink. I don't even know why I'm wasting my time with you. All that does is push
No,
things the wrong way. But
no.
when we come in and say, guys, we need to regroup. I know you've got it in you, and I'm going to dedicate 100% of my attention and my effort to helping you guys bring that out. What can I do to help you?
Get everybody's attention. I'd say, look, everybody knows we're going through a little rough period here. And I want you to know I accept full responsibility. This is my fault that things aren't going the way that we want them to go. And I promise you, I know I can coach better and I'm going to coach better. And part of coaching better is pushing you harder. So don't take that personally. That's just what I owe you. So just understand that I'm not blaming y'all. I'm blaming myself.
That goes back to one of the principles of leadership we discussed in episode 4 last week, and that was lead from the front.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, we're going to walk the walk. We're not just going to talk the talk. So if a player sees that we're going to take some of the responsibility for the wrong calls in a weightlifting meet, or calling the wrong coverage, or not having our guys fit enough to handle fourth quarter 2-minute drive, either defending it or executing it. Those are things that once we take responsibility for that, then all of a sudden the player's like, well, if they're willing to take responsibility, maybe I should take responsibility for my part in that. Maybe I could have done a little bit better. Maybe I could have had a little better attitude. Maybe I could have been more honest with coach about how I felt during the warm-ups. Or, maybe I could have made sure that I knew that the guy next to me knew what his assignment was, whatever it might be. But if we show that we're willing to take some of the blame and each individual then accepts responsibility for their own actions or their own inactions, their performance, I think the team overall will get better because a great team is a sum of great parts.
When you take the blame for a rough period, whether it's for an individual or for the team, then the warriors, the real players, they will say, "Oh, the heck with that! I could ought to do better. I can do better, and I'm going to start doing better. I'm not letting somebody else take the blame for my failure to play the game at a higher level." The phonies will say, "Oh, yeah, he's right. It is his fault. It ain't ever theirs." So there's a difference between warriors and phonies right there.
I agree with that. I can't believe it went so fast, Coach, but we're already approaching the end of this podcast. Is there any other final thoughts you'd like to leave us with for this week?
Overarching thought about everything we said is you can't ever let the players think you've given up on them. You can't. Because then if they hadn't already, they'll give up on themselves. So always believe in your players, help them believe in themselves. And if you're going through a little losing streak and somebody does something good, yell from the rooftops. Praise him as though he just, found a cure for some incurable disease. Just make them feel special, make them feel good about themselves.
Well, it's like that old hymn we taught, lift me up. Our job is to lift our athletes up. Yes, we want them to lift weights and to run faster and stuff, but we need to lift them up so they're in a position to execute uh, the skills that the coaches want them to on the field or on the court or on the mat, whatever it might be, and have the physical tools to execute those skills, have the understanding, have the effort. But we need to always stand behind them and lift them up and to kind of get them prepared so that they can execute and do the things that we know they're capable of doing. So I agree with that totally. We never give up on a kid.
Coach, that's right. And look, if your quarterback is not playing real well, Joe Montana is not going to walk in to your building, the next day and sign a contract, and now you got Joe Montana. You got to make the best of what you've got and make those guys, even if they aren't real good, make them think they are.
That they can always get better. And
Absolutely.
once they know that we believe that, and that we'll work with them and we'll invest in them to help them get better, I think we're in good shape to maybe get out of that losing streak or that losing slump, or to feel better about our performance and work a little harder. Coach, I really appreciate your time again. If you like this, if you'd like us to discuss a different aspect of this, please let us know on the YouTube channel. Please subscribe. Please share this with your other coaches, other friends, other athletes that you think might benefit from it. It's our mission right now to kind of pour into you all as coaches and athletes, and kind of talk about some different ways that you might be able to bring some different things to the athletes that you work with. So, Coach,
Coach, all right. I'll see you the next time, Coach. Thanks a million.
take care. God bless, Johnny.
Yes, sir. Same.